see how the highways are on that road and others. I want to go to Allison Chinchar, who's standing by, just monitoring the tracking of this. Let's just get a sense of the latest, Allison.
That's right. So the big shift that we've seen is now we're starting to see that turn to the north and make its way to Florida. In doing that, however, it now means the eye of the storm is back out over open water, and very warm open water at that. That is what's going to allow this storm to re-intensify over the coming hours. The official forecast from the National Hurricane Center does take that trek back up to a Category 4 strength directly over the Florida Keys. Then it continues up the west coast. We're talking Naples, Fort Myers, then into Tampa, where it will weaken pretty quickly. But again, the big question for a lot of people has been, why is it going to take such a sharp turn to the right? Why not just go back out over the open Gulf? So here's why. The past couple of days, what's been steering the storm is this high pressure right here in the Atlantic. Now, as it edges closer to Florida, it's now going to start to interact with the high pressure just off the coast of Texas. That's essentially blocking it from going too far into the Gulf. Then, as it goes north, it's going to interact with this portion of air, but that's going to retreat, allowing the storm to be able to push pretty far inland, maybe as far as, say, Tennessee, even into Kentucky. So that's going to be the concern. Now, the major concerns going forward are going to be storm surge. We're talking 5 to 10 feet south of Miami through Key West, 10 to 15 feet from Naples down towards Key Largo, even Tampa looking at 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. And then we started to see even some of that creep into portions of Georgia and South Carolina with 4 to 6 feet of storm surge. Winds also going to be a huge factor. Take a look at some of these numbers. For maximum wind gusts, 134 miles per hour in Fort Myers, 135 in Key West. Even Orlando, which is pretty far inland, looking at nearly 75 miles per hour for those peak wind gusts and rainfall, guys. Anderson, this is also going to be the key thing to note. Storm surge is huge, but you also have to keep in mind, as that water comes inland, you also have the water coming down as well. And we could be looking at widespread 6 to 10 inches of rain, and then some heavier pockets that could be 15 plus inches on top of the storm surge that comes in. So again, the main thing, folks, when it starts to come in, don't get out on the roads. Don't get in that water, because the storm surge alone is enough to trap your car, let alone any flash flooding that could incur as well at the same time.
Yeah, so many things to think about depending on where you want to get to. Allison, appreciate that. Allison Chinchar. We're going to take another quick break, and our coverage continues.
I witnessed Hurricane Louis, but it was never like this. This one is the worst and the most devastated, done more damage to Barbuda than any other storm that we in our lifetime have experienced.
wanna know what it feels like to have your body so close. Let me absolve you of the past that controls you. I just wanna know what you look like without a weight on your soul. I know somewhere we could get away. If you wanna find another place, love, disappear and never leave a trace. I'll take you anywhere you want. So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Who you really So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause
John Berman in Miami. The winds and rain have picked up here. Hurricane Irma has taken that turn to the northwest, which means the winds and rains we're feeling now will continue until tomorrow and maybe double. And that's just here on the west coast of Florida. It could be even worse, and the storm surge there is the major concern. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge in some places. I want to go to Punta Gorda on the west coast of Florida right now. We have storm chaser Ben McMillan there. And Ben, we can see in your shot the water behind you there. If you have a storm surge on the west coast, which in some places would be 10 to 15 feet, what does that mean?
Yeah, good evening, John. We're on the Peace River outside of Punta Gorda, and we already are getting 3 to 5 foot high waves battering the coast here. And we're still 24 hours away from the worst impact in this part of Florida. So it's just going to go downhill as these waves and these winds increase in size and intensity.
Yeah, that's not a good sign if this is happening already. It will get much worse tomorrow throughout the night and then throughout the day. You know, Ben, you've watched a lot of storms, followed a lot of storms. What's unique about Irma?
The fact that Irma is so slow moving and is going to hug the coast is one of my biggest concerns at this point. A lot of times hurricanes come inland in one small area and move on and then weaken. However, she's going to stay out longer over the sea and potentially affect millions of population along the western Florida coast, which could prolong the dangerous conditions.
You know, and Ben, if people have been watching, they've heard you say that one of your concerns is if Irma hits where you fear it might, it could leave parts of Florida looking like a third world country. What did you mean by that?
Well, John, we're looking at major hurricane status, which is winds well over 100 miles an hour, 110 miles an hour to be exact. And that major hurricane status is supposed to be maintained not just through Naples, not through Fort Myers, but up through Tampa and even points north. And that's going to cause a lot of folks to experience the harshest conditions of this storm throughout the day on Sunday.
And again, we've heard Florida officials, including Governor Rick Scott, saying, look, we can replace your house, we can replace your belongings, but we can't replace lives. Hopefully, the preparations are what they should be. We've seen a lot of people move in a hurry on the West Coast right now. What have you seen in terms of the evacuations and the preparations where you are, Ben?
John, Punta Gorda is only 6 feet above sea level, so folks in this area definitely need to get out because storm surge of 10 to 15 feet will overtake this area if it comes into it. And a lot of folks don't really even act like there's a concern. We've seen several people, several locals just doing their daily business. We've urged them to leave and do it soon.
Ben McMillan for us in Punta Gorda. Important points to make. Look, this isn't about scaring people. This is about warning people of what is to come. And the forecasts are very clear. A 10 to 15-foot storm surge there. So we hope people are paying attention, getting to safety while there is still time. Ben McMillan, our thanks to you in Punta Gorda. Please stay safe. I want to go up the peninsula now of Florida to Gainesville. So many people have moved north in this state. We're going to a shelter in Gainesville where CNN's Kaylee Hartung is. And Kaylee, this is a shelter catering to seniors and people with special needs.
It is, John. And Jim Polk here, one of the many who's made that choice to come here. Jim, you got a phone call last night that made the decision for you to come to this shelter today. Tell me about that phone call.
Well, my oxygen company called me and advised me to go to a shelter because they wouldn't be able to take care of me after today.
So what can this shelter do for you? What services does it provide when it comes to your oxygen and the need for it that you're afraid you wouldn't be able to get at home?
The loss of power was my problem, and we obviously have power here. So that's about 100% of the solution.
You've lived in Florida for a long time. You tell me 40 years on and off.
Yep.
Have you ever been in a situation like this one?
Not where I had to evacuate to a center. I've been through several hurricanes, but not of this magnitude.
How are the emotions of this one different?
It's a much bigger storm than usual. I feel like it's going to do a lot of damage to this part of the country.
Do you think that folks here in Gainesville recognize the threat that's here? We hear our reporters from CNN down in Miami or over in Tampa talking about the storm surge, and all of the damage that could come as a result of that. But here in Gainesville, we're pretty far inland.
It's going to be primarily wind damage, but a 100-mile-an-hour wind can do a lot of damage. And it'll take down power lines, and it'll be quite a while before power is restored.
The FEMA chief now saying millions could be without power in Florida for weeks, possibly. Now that you're here, how long are you prepared to stay here?
As long as it takes to get power back on.
What did you pack with you to bring here?
I packed like I was going camping.
So what's in that bag of yours underneath this cot?
Everything. A few snacks, a lot of clothing, bedding, medicines, and, just miscellaneous other things.
Now, this is as far as our cameras can get inside this shelter for the privacy of other people here. We really appreciate you talking to us. But for folks who can't see what's going on around us, how do you describe the setup that's here and the care you feel is being given to you all?
I think they're doing a great job for the situation they're in. They may be in a learning process as well as everybody around. So, but they're doing well.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. Good luck to you.
Well, thank you.
John, this facility at capacity, more than 100 folks here in need of care.
Kaylee Hartung for us in Gainesville, Florida. Please give our best to Jim right there. These are hard decisions to go to the shelters, and it is hard once you are there. This is not easy to get through, and people need strength over the next few days. So, Kaylee, thanks so much for that. Look, one of the furthest things from people's mind right now, games, but, the sports teams around this state, and sports are big here in Florida, have had to make some very major decisions. So many games in pro and college sports canceled for this weekend. Much more of CNN's special live coverage right after this.
Let me disarm you. I'm not trying to own you. I just wanna know what it feels like to have your body so close. Let me absolve you of the past that controls you. I just wanna know what you look like without a weight on your soul. I know somewhere we could get away. If you wanna find another place, love. Disappear and never leave a trace. Take you anywhere you want. So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Who you really So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Spoken in silence, blazing like sirens. I can bring you out of the darkness into the fiery light. I know somewhere we could get away. If you wanna find another place, love, disappear and never leave a trace. Take you anywhere you want. So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Who you really are. So let me disarm you. Disarm you. Disarm you. So let me disarm you. Disarm you. I just wanna love who you really
Welcome back to continuing coverage. Hurricane Irma. I want to show you some of the images coming out of Key West. This is just a buoy which gives you just a sense of some of the wave action that we are beginning to see as the water level starts to rise, though nowhere near as much as it will be. And these waves, as the wind picks up, larger and larger waves. You see some of the tree action there. But again, this is just a taste of what is to come in Key West. I want to go on the phone to a guy named JD who owns a bar down in Key West. JD, I understand you closed your bar because of the storm, but you didn't choose to evacuate. What kind of preparations are you making right now?
Well, I actually put up the shutters at my home and tied up the boat, got everything out of the yard, and my house is now loaded with everything from outside. But then I was getting riled up by everybody for staying, so I thought maybe it would be best to find a room. And here I am at the Marriott beachside.
So how high are you off the ground? Is it multi-stories?
Well, actually, I have a ringside seat. I am on the 3rd floor with a spiral staircase going up to the rooftop if I was that brave.
Well, that's probably good to just have that as an option, and that's great that you're on the 3rd floor, because obviously, any kind of storm surge that hopefully would put you out of the wave. That, of course, with winds and waves on top of that, there's no telling what things are going to be like. I assume, you've ridden out storms before, have you?
Yes, I have a couple, but nothing like this. and this now is rated, I think, only a Category 3, but that could change. And the buildings here are rated Category 5. So we have other people staying here from Key West, including some of the military, some of the police, some officials, and other people from the town that chose to not leave. So it was a very wise choice to be here. And the room has an ocean view, so, I mean, I can see everything. Sailboats out, anchored in the harbor.
And I assume you have some food, you have some supplies to last for a couple of days. Any regret about not leaving the Keys?
No, actually, it's kind of like an exciting vacation. A little more exciting than what I'd like, but an exciting vacation nonetheless. And I did bring some food with me and some wine, so I'm all set. And I also brought the cat. The cat did not want to stay home.
I can imagine. Well, I'm glad you have company, and we'll check in with you when this thing is done. We wish you the best, and obviously everybody in the Keys. I want to check in with Tom Sater, who's following the track of this storm.
You guys
Tom, I mean, you hear folks in the Florida Keys who've decided not to evacuate despite the constant warnings, despite the constant pressure from authorities. Just talk about where this storm is now, what the Keys should be seeing, and when.
Well, Anderson, we now have a tornado warning for Key West. This is one of few that we've had today. There will be many. In fact, it's not unusual to have 50, 60, 70, 75, 80 tornado warnings. I know Harvey had over 200. But again, tornadoes are going to be an issue. And I know for many, when they're looking at, of course, Irma making its way toward southwestern Florida, Miami, Hollywood, Boca, Delray Beach may think, okay, we're not going to see the strongest winds, but you're in an area where you could have a higher concentration of tornadoes. Now, again, as we continue to watch this, Anderson, make its way off the coast, I'm going to show you a radar in a minute. Very interesting now to continue to watch the eye. We're already seeing on the infrared satellite imagery more purple. That's the higher cloud tops, colder cloud tops, so it's starting to generate some energy. But I think we may be going through one of those eye wall replacement cycles. More than when almost the entire state of Florida under a hurricane warning. Watches to the north will change in due time as the storm progresses northward. We've talked tirelessly about the storm surge, of course, getting quite great. Now, you have to understand where you see the area purple of 10 to 15 feet. Initially, that's wetlands. That's Everglades. There's barely any roads there until you get up to around Alligator Alley. But it does extend all the way through the Carolinas, and that will continue to be the case. Now, here's the eye. We've got a secondary banding in yellow that is starting to occur. We typically see that when that outer band starts to form, and then it shrinks in toward the center, and it gains strength. It's a little close to the shoreline right now, but I think that's going to happen. Now, consider this. We've talked tirelessly about as well. We've got 90 miles here from Cuba to the coast of Florida to develop. This is going to be more than 90 miles. You have to consider the curvature and its western track and then to the north. So instead of 90 miles of extremely warm water, we've got 120, 125 miles. So that will intensify over time with this water temperatures being at 85 or 90. Tornado watch now for the extreme southern half of Florida. We're going to talk more in depth about that as time progresses and what to expect past Florida. There are millions of people up in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, and Tennessee that have got an interesting forecast, too, and we'll share that with them, Anderson, in just a little bit.
Yeah, and with all that warm water, of course, the strength of the storm probably increasing. Tom Sater, thanks. We'll continue to check in with you. I want to go to break. As we go to break, though, I want you to look at some time-lapse images that our Patrick Ottman has been taking in Cuba of what he has seen of this storm. Gives you a sense of what to expect here in Florida in the coming hours.
I can barely hear you. It's coming in strong. Yeah, let me just get my jacket on. Woo! It is really strong here. I think it's just the beginning of this very powerful storm, Category 5, coming to this section of Cuba. Just now we're kind of feeling the wind pick up again. Where we are, the power was knocked out some 3 or 4 hours ago. I don't think we'll get it back. All day long, we were watching the weather get worse and worse and worse. And this afternoon, a couple really strong bands came through out of nowhere and really almost knocked us off our feet. The Cuban coastline has now come to us. The house and the town where we've been reporting from, is now underwater, probably a good 3 to 4 feet of water. Irma is heading towards Florida, but she is not done with Cuba just yet. We continue to feel strong gusts, see roofs being torn off. There are trees that have been down. The area that I am in, this was not underwater yesterday. It very much so is today. Many of the people live here in small one-story houses, which are now just underwater. No! The storm is leaving, but it's not gone.
Let me disarm you. I'm not trying to own you. I just wanna know what it feels like to have your body so close. Let me absolve you of the past that controls you. I just wanna know what you look like without a weight on your soul. I know somewhere we could get away. If you wanna find another place, love, disappear and never leave a trace. I'll take you anywhere you want. So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Who you really are. So let me disarm you. There's an army I'm fighting around your heart. Let me disarm you. 'Cause baby, I just wanna love who you really are. Spoken in silence, blazing like sirens. I can bring you out of the darkness into the fiery light.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, hello there, John Berman here in Miami. This is Hurricane Irma. It has taken that northwestern turn, and we are now feeling the strongest rain we have yet. That's here in Miami. We've consistently been feeling winds north of 30 miles an hour or so, and this is what we can expect to more or less continue throughout tomorrow as this storm really heads all the way up the Florida Peninsula. Of particular concern right now, the west coast of Florida. Where I am right now, as bad as it is and as bad as it might get, might not be as bad as it is in places like Naples and Fort Myers along the coast, where they're expecting a storm surge of 10 to 15 feet, which is a very big storm surge for those low-lying areas in the bays all the way up the west coast. So we are watching this storm very closely all over the state of Florida. We have some new information on the forecast to track when we can expect landfall in the Florida Keys and here on the peninsula. Let's go to Tom Sater at the CNN Weather Center. Tom.
Yeah, John, we continue to watch the storm center now, making its way away from the coast of Cuba. We knew it would make its way here, and all week long, since actually last weekend, we were saying until the storm reaches Cuba and turns northward, We just do not know for sure where landfall will be. The computer models, we pushed into them and rely on them, and they have been fluctuating earlier this week to the east and now more of a push to the west. And we're going to continue to watch that because the steering currents mean everything, but this is such a monster storm, it really doesn't mean anybody's going to miss out on this. So we are watching the development. The pressure is dropping. Most likely we're going to see an increase in the winds because it takes a while for the winds to catch up to that pressure drop. In fact, 125 miles per hour, I wouldn't be surprised to see it up to 130. That'll kick it back up to Category 4 status, and we could even see it grow a little bit more. We've got a lot of land or water to work with. It's not just 90 miles. If you talk about the curvature over toward Fort Myers, that's about 125 miles. So it's got time, it's got fuel, and it still has its spin and intensity. We had a few models that wanted to drape it down into the higher terrain of Cuba. That would have tore the system down a little bit. But really, for the models to be even in central Cuba or staying off, it's been running pretty much mediocre right through these models. We have a tornado watch now for the entire southern half of Florida. That will continue to move northward in time as the storm approaches. We've had a few warnings. We've got a warning right now in Key West for a tornado. So that means it's either Doppler indicated or visually indicated. So again, on the ground. As the bands continue to move in, the wind gusts will increase. There will be times of a complete downpour activity and then a couple of quiet times. But we are going to see a gentle increase in the winds. The forecast, which shows the spin and the rainfall, bright red are your heavy downpours. And again, our storm surge is going to be significant, mainly first in the Everglades. Of course, Miami, we're watching them closely, but the real significant increase of the storm surge in the Everglades. And that's good news. It's wetlands. They can have that. But as it continues to march northward, we'll see more of a tornado outbreak possibility on the East Coast. We'll have the surge, of course, continuing up the East Coast. On the West Coast, winds will be out of the north somewhat, northeasterly. They will wrap around. I think Tampa is going to have a problem. Not so much, of course, well, yes, when the storm moves through. But don't let your guard down in Tampa Bay because most likely on the back edge of this, we're going to find winds coming in from the northwest and due west. So that'll shove the, of course, storm surge and those walls of water back into Tampa Bay, which could be just as bad, if not worse. I want to go a little bit further out, though, and talk about those in Georgia, South Carolina, into Alabama and Tennessee. As you see, the track has been curving, and we've been watching this. Let me show you what some of the models look like, of course, after we talk about the winds, because I want everybody to know, if you haven't been in the southeast, you see the core of the winds move up through Florida, hugging that west coast, moving northward. What you see in purple here are wind gusts in excess of 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour. This area of the southeastern U.S. is pine country, which means hardy pines, weak root systems, but very high. I mean, they're massive. They fall in isolated thunderstorms, knock out power, damage trees. We could easily see tens and tens of thousands of trees destroyed through Florida and through the southeast. But now, John, watch what happens to these models. They move up with the force of wind. We carry it into into northern Alabama. I'll show it to you later. It starts to become a bird's nest like we had with Harvey, which means there may be a loss of steering currents when it gets from central Tennessee to northern Alabama, and that means heavy, heavy rainfall. We'll break that down for you more, of course, in the coming hours. But again, it's just beginning. We've got a multi-day event heading our direction. John.
You know, Tom Sater, listening to every word of your forecast. 20 million people in Florida alone, and then you start to talk about Alabama and Georgia. Millions more will be affected by this storm as these days continue. Millions already affected. So many hurt, so much damage through the Caribbean. That is why we're watching this storm so closely. The Florida Keys, you are next. I want to go to Bill Weir, who is in Key Largo for us right now. Bill, what are you seeing?
Well, John, we moved locations since last we spoke. We're now over on the Biscayne Bay side, a little higher ground, a little more wind protection, although we have a caution crocodiles in area sign behind us as another reminder that we are in one of the most biodiverse in all the world. The one place where you can see gators and crocs together. They're probably hunkered down, but we're, of course, carried about the human life facing this storm. We heard about devil-may-care, old-time conch, never-leavers down here on Thursday night who were sort of partying in advance of the storm. That tone definitely changed last That's when they evacuated those 500 prisoners, moved the emergency operations center from Marathon Key, about 40 miles north of Key West, to Key Largo here to be a little bit more out of harm's way. We're getting word that power outages are now hitting Cudjoe Key, about 800 people without power on the west side of Key West. It's in pockets, but the Keys Energy Service is saying we're not going to shut the power proactively to avoid electrocution hazards. We're going to let nature take its course. Now, while this is the biggest evacuation probably in American, if not human history, there are those who won't leave. And I met one boat captain, actually he's a dive captain, who's been sailing these waters down here most of his life. He decided to ride it out in a stone structure next to his harbor. His name is Tim Jones, and I had to ask him the obvious question. Let me channel everyone from the governor to my mom.
Why are we still here?
Why are you here? What is wrong with you?
Well, let's take our friend that was here the other night. They ran right into the storm. So the question is, we're safe. The storm, up until the last update, we had no idea where it was going to go. The whole state of Florida was going to get hit. Where was safe going to be? And there's no fuel. Once you get out there now, you can't get back. So we have 400 gallons of fuel on the boat that we can put in our car if we need to. We've got a little scooter, and we've got gas for that from here. So why go anywhere else?
That's the logic of a long-time conch in the Keys, John. We can only cross our fingers that it was a wise move and that all are spared by Irma.
Look, we hope it goes well for him, but what the authorities have said consistently is just get inland. Just get inland. You don't have to go all the way north up the Florida Peninsula. Just get to higher ground if you can, because the storm surge is the major concern. Bill Weir for us in Key Largo. Bill, stay safe. I'm in Miami. This is a Florida-wide event as this storm has now taken the turn to the north. Millions of people now feeling the impact from Hurricane Irma. Going to go from the East Coast where I am all the way around Florida to the West Coast. Chris Cuomo now, I believe, in Naples. Chris.
Hey, John, how are you? We left Miami a few hours ago, made about the 125-mile-an-hour trip here, and the expectation was it would be quiet. And yet we're getting pelted with the same kind of bands. If people are checking out the weather sites, they're going to NOAA, NOAA, and taking a look at this weather. You'll see these hotly colored reds and greens and purples of these different bands on the radar of weather. And we've been getting pelted with them here the same way we were in Miami. So what does that mean? Well, to the meteorologists, it means that this storm is starting to take shape. Hurricane Irma is starting to manifest. And we're getting hit with it right now. And still, very mild. The gusts are manageable. What about this place and its vulnerability? Here we are on the West Coast, 125 plus miles away, as I just described. This place has about 19,000 people in the city proper here. Ed Lavandera just spoke with the mayor. He said that they got lucky here, and here's why. People got out early, even before the storm track shifted, Ed Lavandera reports. So they made the move. They got out of here. The mayor believes there are only several thousand people still here. Now, that's still a lot. That's still a lot that decided to stay behind with just one place to eat, Ed Lavandera said he saw in like the whole area driving around for hours. You have the Gulf on one side. You have more water on the other. We were watching the storm track move above our heads, but right now, just like that, it's totally closed out. The rain is coming horizontal and vertical, if you can tell, John, and this is still nothing. And one other unique part of Naples, when the dollar amount starts to go up of what this cost, the houses here, the waterfront houses, there are many that are $10 million and above. Now, that's the least of our concerns. We're worried about people, not property, but the dollar amount's going to be high. This is one of the reasons why is a place like this. So from the pelting rain here in Naples, still over half a day away from when it's supposed to hit. It's supposed to hit here tomorrow afternoon. And already we're seeing rain that's way out of the ordinary. Let's get to Kyung-La on Miami Beach. There, they've got curfews. They've got evacuations that have been in place for some time, Kyung. What's the latest there?
You know, we're having an extremely calm lull. And if you had seen me about 15 minutes ago, it was pouring. There were heavy winds. An hour before that, same story. So that's the ongoing story of the hurricane. Those bands hammering this part of Miami Beach, and the concern that this is going to continue. We're just beginning to see this. And so what we're hearing from city officials is that 2 hours from now, the city has put in place a mandatory curfew, a curfew from 8 p.m. local time to 7 a.m. The Miami Beach police saying that if you are out, if you are walking, if you are driving, you are subject to arrest. So why are they laying down the hammer? In part because of where you are, Chris. That all of the news has been that everything is going to the western side of the state, that people may be overconfident, that they think now's the time to come back to Miami Beach, that it's safe to be here. But what the city is saying is it is absolutely not safe to be here. There are many sections of Miami Beach where it is a complete ghost town. They wanted to stay that way. The fire department, in fact, took 3 of their stations and they moved all the emergency vehicles off of Miami Beach. So even though this forecast is showing that it's pushing further west, they are on high alert on the east, and they want to send that message out to everybody who lives here. Do not come back. Chris?
Good. Even though the path of the storm has shifted, that doesn't mean that going back is safe. I hope that message is resonating. Here in Naples, this is a place that is now of increased concern. That's why we moved here from Miami to see the situation. The good news, the mandatory evacuation heeded early. The mayor told our Ed Lavandera he believes that most of the people are out, probably several thousand remain. This is a mandatory evacuation place, and it is a ghost town. That is good news. The bad news is the bans are already coming. The rain is heavier than we expected right now. And as we get farther north, there is concern about where this eye is going to be and how long it will stay and punish these areas. Port Charlotte is north of us. That's where Miguel Marquez is. Miguel, how is it up there? Do you have any of these cells in the area, these squalls coming through?
It is incredible just how big a difference a few miles makes. We do not have any of that yet. We've had some winds, no rain yet, but just watching the radar very closely, clearly it is coming. The current path takes the storm just to the left of where we're standing right now. So Port Charlotte would be on the right of the storm, really the worst place. Punta Gorda, which is just south of us, that's a place that got leveled by Charlie 13 years ago. So people here are very, very well aware of what's going on. This is Kingsway Elementary. This has become a makeshift shelter, essentially. All of the shelters in Charlotte County are full at this point. They have 5 other shelters in Sarasota County that they're moving people to. I want to give you a sense of the parking lot. People parked up on the grass here. They've moved everybody in, as many people as they could. They cleared out the cafeteria, got everybody in, cleared it out again, made more room, moved people upstairs. They have brought in hundreds and hundreds of people into this shelter alone, 900 now in this one shelter. I want to introduce you to some of my friends out here. Where's the Guerriere family? 10 kids, this woman over here. This is the mom right over here. Hello, hello. 10 kids she is managing here. Let me just ask you, how are you guys doing?
Good. I'm very good.
You've never been through a hurricane. What do you expect?
I don't know. I really don't.
I know.
Are you nervous?
Nope.
Why not?
Because I love rain. It is the best time to sleep.
This is something that people don't have a very good sense of. They don't get that this weather, and when it starts to rain, it's not what they are going to get when this hurricane hits. You, young woman, have a very interesting story. Her family left Homestead, which got hit by Hurricane Andrew in 2004. You came here because you thought it would be safe, but now you've had, what's happened?
Yeah, we came from Homestead here because they told us to evacuate, and then we actually end up evacuating again to come here. Andrew came to Homestead a few years ago, and we kind of took that seriously, but we're trying to make the best out of it, not just say negative.
You've literally gone from the frying pan into the fire. And it's too late for people to move now across the state. I have met a lot of people from Miami in this area, or that area of the state, that came up this way to escape the storm there, and now they're regretting it, but it's really too late to go back. Gas in this area, non-existent. We went to station after station after station. You just can't find it. If you pull up to the station, others think that there may be gas there, so you quickly there's a swarm of people that go to the gas station, and then everybody kind of discovers that there's none there. It's kind of a surreal, bizarre situation. Very, very calm right now, but clearly things are going to get more hairy as the night goes on and into tomorrow. We will not certainly be able to stand out here in about 24 hours. Chris?
Miguel, I'll tell you what a difference. We are just getting pummeled here. The one benefit, I'm using an umbrella right now, and I will not be able to do that when these winds pick up. But you know, Dave is our photographer. Take a look over my right shoulder. You see that crane? Even though it's not windy here yet, it spun that baby sideways. This latest band turned that crane. They're supposed to they're supposed to turn. You know, that's how they kind of offset the energy that's being set against them by the wind. They distribute the force and they rotate around. It's a safety mechanism, so it's a good thing if you see them move in a bad situation. But this is just the beginning, and we are getting pummeled. And another thing that you notice quickly is that this ground is spongy. It cannot take water. It starts to pool and puddle minutes into any type of heavy downpour, and that is part of the ingredient structure that goes into a bad flooding situation. You don't have absorption to start with. All right, so that's where we are in Naples. We were just with Miguel Marquez in Port Charlotte, a little bit north. There it's still okay. Both places share a common fate. We are in the line of the storm for now. What are the preparations? What are the expectations? We have people everywhere. We have Renee Marsh. She is in Washington, D.C. at the FEMA headquarters. Now, you just talked to the acting head of Homeland Security, Elaine Duke. She took over, of course, for General John Kelly, who's now the president's chief of staff. What is the word on the Homeland front?
Well, Chris, I can tell you this 24 operation is getting busier as this storm continues to get closer to the United States. And I'm actually joined live now with acting DHS Secretary Elaine Duke. Come on in. I know you just met with the head of FEMA. Kind of give me an update on what came out of that briefing.
Well, we are poised. We have the U.S. Virgin Islands that we are going to start search and rescue on as soon as the weather permits, and then the storm coming through Florida. We expect it to be through the Keys early morning hours, and then throughout Florida the rest of the day. It's going to be a catastrophic storm, and we are poised and ready.
So when we talk about this specific Hurricane Irma that's coming towards the United States, what is your greatest concern?
Our greatest concern is that it is going to likely become a Category 4 again. The winds are going to be powerful and sustained. Electrical outages will be extremely broad and probably long-lived. It will take a long time to put the electrical grid back together, and that's going to be a hard recovery for those survivors in Florida.
That's right. We're talking about millions of people, upwards of 5 million people without power. No power also means no clean water, no waste management. How will the federal government respond to help millions of people who may not have power or even clean water in some areas?
We are pre-positioned to help Governor Scott in the state of Florida in the surrounding areas. So things like generators, fuel. So as Governor Scott sees the need for these, we are ready to come forward. I saw the president this morning. He is motivated to help the states as we go through these hurricanes, including the continued recovery in Texas.
And what about these evacuation plans? I mean, you know, Florida has tons of hospitals, a lot of elderly people. Are you confident in the evacuation plans that were pulled together by the federal government assisting the states to make sure that the most vulnerable are able to get out and we don't see people flooded out in nursing homes or hospitals because they just weren't able to get out?
I think the early evacuation orders will really help with that, so it's not a last-minute surge. We will have priority for hospitals, elderly facilities, those type after the storm, but orderly evacuation is very important.
And on this topic of evacuation, I mean, we've heard the head of FEMA saying, get out. You have to go. If you're in a low-lying area, get out. But some people may be concerned. They don't want to go to a shelter because they worry that DHS may enforce immigration laws and things of that sort, or enforce immigration issues if they are not legal here. What do you have to say to those folks who may be concerned they don't want to go to a shelter because they're afraid?
Thank you for that question. We are doing no routine immigration enforcement. We are not doing immigration enforcement at the shelters. Everyone should be safe to go to a shelter and seek the safety, the food, the water they need.
Acting Secretary Elaine Duke, thank you very much. Chris, we're going to throw it back to you.
All right, Athena, thank you so much. An important interview. It is good to know that government on all levels is coordinating to meet the needs that come here. You know, we've all heard the definition that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Preparation is a key part of that equation, and to know that they put the evac plans in place, hopefully the people who need to heed them did so, that they have the resources, they have the shelters as best as they can. Now, what's the biggest variable? The opportunity. What is this storm going to bring? Right now, here up in Naples, this was not the expectation just a couple of days ago that you'd be seeing these heavy bands these quickly. Let's get the word from the governor. Governor Scott of Florida is giving us the latest update right now.
South Florida is already experiencing tropical storm force winds and dangerous seas. Hurricane Irma is battering South Florida and the Florida Keys with dangerous winds and continues to remain a catastrophic and life-threatening major Category 3 storm with winds of 125 miles per hour. The center is getting better organized and will intensify as it approaches Florida. The core will move across the Keys early tomorrow morning and go across our state on Sunday. It will impact northwest Florida on Monday. The Keys will see direct impact of the eye of the storm. There will be 18 to 15 inches of rain across the state and up to 25 inches in the Keys. Tornadoes are possible in South Florida this evening and Central Florida tomorrow. Hurricane conditions will be felt across the west coast beginning Sunday morning. But tropical storm conditions will be felt across the warning area. Millions of Floridians will begin seeing impacts with life-threatening winds tonight. This is a serious threat of significant storm surge along the entire west coast of Florida, and this has increased to 15 feet of impact above ground level in southwest Florida. Tampa will see a surge of 5 to 8 feet. The Big Bend area will see a surge of 3 to 6 feet. We'll also see an increase in flooding of rivers throughout the peninsula. This is clearly a life-threatening situation. Remember, in southwest Florida, the storm surge comes after the strongest winds. Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down. Local officials will let you know when it is safe. The storm surge will rush in and it could kill you. When it happens, the water just rushes in and rushes out. With the storm's latest track, families in the Panhandle need to be on high alert for severe weather, including tropical storm and hurricane force winds. Here in Tallahassee, it is likely we will experience hurricane force winds, and families must start preparing now. We saw what Hurricane Irma did to this community last year, and we could see similar or more severe wind threats from Irma. If you have been ordered to evacuate, you need to leave now. This is your last chance to make a good decision. Evacuations are in place in areas across the state. More than 6.5 million Floridians have been ordered to evacuate. Do not put yourself or your family's life at risk. Now is the time to do the right thing for your family. School buses are aiding in evacuations. Please take advantage of this service. If you need to leave and are unable to do so for any reason, call 1-800-342-3557 and we will do everything we can to get you out. Protecting life is our absolute top priority. No resource or expense will be spared to protect families. I urge everyone to check on their neighbors, their family, and their friends. If you know someone who is not evacuating and should, please contact them and make sure they have a plan to get out now. We have been very aggressive in our preparation for this storm, and now it's upon us. Every Floridian should take this seriously and be aggressive to protect their family. Possessions can be replaced. Your life, your family cannot be replaced. Shelters. We have been working around the clock with counties to ensure there are enough shelters. Currently, there are more than 385 shelters open across every county in the path of the storm, and more are opening tonight. More than 70,000 Floridians have taken shelter, and there is still room for more. If you have a building and emergency officials ask you to open a shelter, please comply. This is so important to families seeking safety. Everyone in Florida needs to find a safe place to go. Traffic. Evacuation routes are moving, and we have implemented emergency shoulder use on I-4 from 50th Street in Tampa to east of State Road 429 in Orlando. Our 1,700 state troopers remain on the road to assist in evacuations and traffic. They will remain on our roads until it is unsafe. Check real-time traffic information and evacuation routes at fl511.com. We are still aggressively working to keep gas stations open and filled along active evacuation routes. I waived Florida's motor fuel import tax for 5 days to help bring more fuel to our state for storm response and recovery. This will make our efforts to bring in fuel from neighboring states after the storm easier. We absolutely know fuel is important, and we are doing and voting every state resource we can to address this problem to ensure we have fuel immediately we want it for everybody, but we want it immediately for first responders and rescue efforts. Every single Florida Guardsman that can be called up has already been deployed to prepare and respond to this storm. We have so many members of our law enforcement community that are putting their lives at risk to help Floridians get to a safe place. And they will not stop until it's no longer safe. We cannot thank them enough. Utilities. Right now, more than 76,000 people are without power. It's going to get worse. Utility providers have actively pre-positioned resources throughout the state and in neighboring states. We know how important power is. We will aggressively work with our utilities to make sure it gets back on and in neighboring states. Regarding recovery, we have search and rescue staged and ready once the storm passes and is safe for first responders. I met with the Coast Guard Admiral today, and they are here and have asked us to help in this process. The storm has continued to change rapidly, but we have food and water pre-positioned to be dispersed to impacted areas. We will do all we can to get this out quickly. The Department of Transportation, National Guard, and Fish and Wildlife will work as fast as they can to clear roads so we can get food and water to shelters in impacted areas. We also have guardsmen from other states ready to come in and help with this. But disaster response takes time. We will go as fast as we can once the weather is safe. We're also working with FEMA on temporary housing solutions for displaced residents. I've been talking to President Trump pretty much every day, other members of the White House, and other members of the cabinet. They're absolutely committed to provide whatever resource they can to help us live through this storm and in our recovery efforts. I want to be clear, we are under a state of emergency. Those who perform vital services, including healthcare staff, we need you to be there to help your community. You're answering the call now that we need nurses, and we have nearly more than 2,500 who have already responded. Those who respond to this need are heroes to our neighbors with special needs, and we are so grateful to them. But we can still use more. Florida needs volunteer nurses to help at our special needs shelters. If you're a nurse, please email helpfl@flhealth.gov. You can still also email BPRCHD preparedness@flhealth.gov. So many people across the country and across the world have called to offer their prayers and support. I want to thank the governors of the other states that provided every resource we've asked for. I know the entire country is with us. We have our country's best first responders ready to help us, and Florida, we will get through this. This week, Floridians have demonstrated to the world that we know what it means to get prepared. Neighbors are helping neighbors, and strangers united as Floridians have come together to pull through this devastating storm. Let's get together and pull through this. We will come back even stronger. You can follow my Twitter account at FLGovScott for this life-saving messaging and updates in English and Spanish. Hurricane Irma ya ha estado impactando nuestro estado. Este huracán es muy peligroso. Acuérdense que la vida de usted y su familia es lo más importante. Por favor, tengan cuidado. Cada familia ya debe de estar en un sitio seguro. Para más información, por favor, llamen a 1-800-342-3557. También visitan...
All right, we're listening to Governor Scott right now. He's speaking in Spanish. He's been giving his messages throughout the day in English and Spanish. On his Twitter feed, he's giving messages in English and Spanish, and that is obviously a matter of practicality. There are so many different people. You have to make sure you're getting as much coverage in every way, including language. Some headlines from the presser. One, this is an obvious state of emergency. The governor could not be more direct and serious in his warnings to people that you must heed the evacuation orders. The governor is taking questions right now. We should go back. Let's hear what he's asked and what the responses are.
If you just stop and think about this for a second, we want everybody to survive this hurricane, right? We focused on getting everybody out of the evacuation zones, get them into safe shelters. After it happens, be patient, wait until local officials tell you if you can go back. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to have down power lines. We're going to have a lot of trees down. We're going to have roads that are impassable. We're going to have flooding. We're going to have all these issues. Everybody's going to have to be patient, and it's going to be hard to be patient. Everybody was going to go back to your home and see what happened. But, you know, we've got at the state, local, and federal level, we're going to have everybody in here trying to get us back. You know, we're going to try to get the fuel back, try to get power back on, try to get the roads cleared, try to do everything. Also, in the beginning, what we're going to want to do is make sure there's going to be recovery efforts. And so you don't want to be in the way of those. So you've just got to be patient and wait and listen. All the local officials will tell you when it's safe to go back to your neighborhood. We'll at the state level, we'll let you know if the evacuation routes are clear to come back. But everybody's going to have to be patient. This is not, you know, this is just a massive storm, and the recovery efforts and the restoration efforts are going to take time. And I wish it was going to happen overnight. It's not. This is going to be massive. I'm still praying that we don't lose, lives. But you know, we have the risk now, and we have the risk afterwards. Steve.
I'd like to ask you about the extent to which you're familiar with what we saw after Katrina, which is ocean water, salt water, especially in southwest Florida, mixing with fresh water that's used for agriculture, for drinking, for other uses, and causing massive salt water intrusion that takes years to repair. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I know that's going to be a clear issue that we're going to deal with, but right now my focus is going to be how do we survive this hurricane? How do we get people back to their lives? We're going to have significant issues. We're going to have issues with regard to our beaches. We're going to have all sorts of issues that we're going to have to deal with.
Governor, Ohio announced that it's sending down more than 3,000 of their National Guard. I know earlier in the week you said you had access to as many as 30,000. Are you basically telling send everybody because it's going to be that bad?
What we'll be doing is, so right now we're going to go through and see what happens. We'll be assessing the damage as quickly as possible and finding out exactly what we need. I met with the Admiral for the Coast Guard today. We'll try to get down to the Keys as quickly as we can because that's the first place where we're going to have significant damage. And we're going to have to assess, did we lose bridges? Do we have recovery efforts? Can we even fly in with the airports down there? So we'll figure out what we need, but I can tell you that every time I've talked to President Trump, every time I talk to Brock Long, the FEMA director, everybody I talk to the federal government, they will provide whatever resources, but they know that you want to do it in a coordinated manner. But we'll be doing it. I mean, we have a whole plan to deal with this. Now, everything, as you know, in a disaster, it all changes once you got to find out exactly what happened.
Given the seriousness of what you've communicated the last few minutes, you made a decision to close schools and universities and state offices, and some institutions are going beyond next Monday. Are you giving any thought to extending that order beyond Monday in terms of keeping all schools closed throughout the state?
We'll decide as the weekend goes on. We'll see as we start seeing what happened, and then we'll see what the damage is. We'll be making a decision.
Governor, could you give us an update on where things are with gas stations? Are there any places where people are stalled because they don't have gas? Any problems to that degree?
We have worked to try to get fuel around the state, especially work to try to get fuel in the evacuation routes. I'm sure people have run out of gas around the state. If you can go to fl511.com and look at our evacuation routes, and people are moving. We've got road rangers out there. I don't know if you want to add anything, Brian.
Sure. I have not seen anywhere in the state that is completely out now. I haven't looked at that statistic in a couple of hours. I know that we're, as you have seen, many areas have significant shortages, but I haven't seen anywhere that's completely out. And we're working with the retailers here in the EOC to make sure that those parts of the state that are still moving, they are trying to get as much fuel as possible to those areas as well.
Governor, if you could also give us an update on what's happening with the area around the dike, given the new forecast with the storm.
Sure. We are waiting for an update from the Corps. But if you go back, I mean, the positive is, we did everything we could to keep everybody safe. We hopefully, we'll have less winds there, which will reduce the chance that we'll have the water spill over. But we've, all along the Corps has told us that they don't believe the dike will be impacted.
Governor, I know you can maybe give us some words in Spanish, but the Hispanic community is really concerned about safety and what will happen to their belongings. Are they going to come back to something? ¿Cuál es su mensaje para la gente que se fue, los evacuados? What is your message for those that left the state and are still wondering, am I going to come back to something? Are my belongings going to be in place? ¿Cuál es su mensaje? ¿Se puede decir algo en español?
La seguridad, trabajos, familia, es muy importante para todas las familias en la Florida. Es muy importante para mí, es muy importante para mi familia. Si yo estoy trabajando para todas las personas en la familia, por su casa, por su familia.
Governor, can you talk a little bit about the efforts by law enforcement to evacuate the homeless in some of these heavily impacted or expected heavily impacted areas? I read something that law enforcement is using Baker Acts to get some of these people off the street in some cases.
Our law enforcement has gone above and beyond all around the state to do everything they can to keep people safe. You'd have to reach out to them at the local community to see what each local community has done. But I can tell you that I've traveled the state for the last 5 days, and I've met with law enforcement, and they're very committed. Every life is important to them, and I think they're going to continue as long as they can to do everything they can to get people to safety.
What can people do now in these critical hours to be sure there isn't loss of life?
Steve, I think the biggest thing is if you're in an evacuation zone, you've got to get to the shelter. I mean, you might not, or you've got to get someplace that's higher ground. You got to do it. There's not many hours left because the winds are coming. There's not going to be a lot of time now to be able to drive very far. So you got to get to the shelter. You can go to floridadisaster.org/shelter to find out where they are, or call your local emergency management team. And then the other thing is, if you ought to call your family and friends and make sure they're getting out and tell them how important it is to go to safety. It's disappointing sometimes when you watch on TV that you see somebody that's going to ride it out, and based on what you hear from what the National Hurricane Center is putting out, you think, how could you ride that out? If you go down to the Keys and you think, you're going to have 15 foot of storm surge in these Keys that are not very high. You're going to have 15 plus inches of rain. You're going to have 125 to 150 miles an hour winds. I mean, how is anybody going to survive this? So if anywhere where you think that somebody might be in an area where they ought to evacuate, you ought to call them and try to talk them into tell them how important they are to you.
No one has seen what you've seen, and no one has traveled the state as much as you've traveled in these last 5 or 6 days. So I wanted to ask what you've seen and experienced out there that's caused you special concern.
Well, the thing that really causes me the biggest concern is I don't think anybody has realized the extent of this storm surge. I mean, if you stop and think about it, my hometown, Naples, 15 feet above ground level. I mean, how do you survive that? I mean, and last, I don't know if I remember this story last year, but this lady just south of here, I think there was about 6 foot of storm surge, and she stayed, of course, because of her pets, which you can imagine you want to, and it got to 3 feet, and she realized, it was an older house, she probably has 7 foot ceilings, and she realized she was not going to survive. She was so lucky because she got out of her house and she walked out, and there was a high water vehicle, and it was the last vehicle leaving. If it hadn't, she would have passed away. And so if you stop and think about that, and that was about 6 foot of storm surge. And if you listen to her story, she just talked about how fast the water moved in and how fast the water moved out. There would have been no way for her to survive. And so you just think about how can anybody survive this stuff? So I care about everybody in my state, and I just want everybody to live.
Governor, can I ask you about an issue that you know about from your past role in the business, and that's evacuations from hospitals and nursing homes. And I know earlier in the week you talked about the need to, you all did an air evacuation of one hospital in the Keys. Do you have any indication, because I know that from what I understand, a lot of facilities have had to be evacuated. Have you had any issues, any concerns, any problems in that arena?
There's been a lot of, there's hospitals that have evacuated, and there's also, nursing homes, skilled nursing, a variety of facilities. I did a call with a lot of them last night, and they, some that are, there's still issues. They're trying to find the right shelters. So we're going. We've given them our telephone numbers. We said, tell us where your problems are. We'll do everything we can to help you. I remember last year in Matthew, we had nursing homes that were having a difficult time getting the ambulances to evacuate. So, yeah, people are, they're still struggling to get everything done. But I can tell you that, everybody's working to get it done.
Katrina-like situation where you had some hospitals in New Orleans that were basically cut off.
Gary, I mean, we're talking to everybody. You hope you don't. We've put a lot of effort. Justin Senior's calling around. Dr. Phillips is calling. We're talking to everybody, and we're making ourselves accessible, and we're telling them how to get a hold of us. And so I hope that doesn't happen. If you think about it, what concerns you a lot is that the storm moved west, and I think that for some people that surprised them. And so that's why, we've worked hard, really. You see how many more shelters have gotten put up just in the last 24 hours as this thing has moved west. And it's two things. It's moved west, and the storm surge numbers is just, that is totally different than what anybody's ever seen. I don't think anybody alive today has ever seen in this state anything close to anything like this. 15 feet of storm surge above the ground level. That's. I don't know how you survive that.
Governor, what would you say a lot of the folks that came up here basically from South Florida, now they're more in the path than South Florida. Should they stay here or go somewhere else? Or
I think you should follow the weather and see what's going to happen. Look, if you're not going to go drive back to storm surge, right? You shouldn't be driving back to 120, 150 mile an hour winds. So, the goal is to keep following this. We're going to do everything we can to keep people safe. We're going to do everything we can to inform people of how to make the right decision for safety. We're going to continue to do everything we can to keep evacuation routes open, whatever changes. I can tell you that at the state, federal, and local level, people are working together. They're trying to get the information out to keep everybody safe, and everybody is I've been in so many cities this week. I can tell you they're working hard. All these counties are working hard. You can see how hard people are working here. I can tell you from the White House to FEMA to every federal agency I know is here trying to be helpful.
Governor, are you going to remain here for the timing of the storm coming through your state, or are you going to move around the state while the storm?
I'll decide. I'm going to be here tonight, and then my goal would probably be, if I can get to the Keys to assess the damage, I'll try to get there when I can. I'm really concerned about how many people might still be in the Keys and what's going to happen to them, and so.
Suspending, pending the outcome of the weather.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we've been listening to the governor's press conference there. He was taking questions from people. His message is fairly simple and straightforward. This is a state of emergency. He was answering questions and giving information in English and Spanish. He's trying to get as much coverage as possible of this situation. We are in a place that he was talking about very specifically, Naples. This is where he has a home, and he's describing the impact of storm surge. Now, you may have heard this several times if you've been watching the coverage, but it bears repeating. Storm surge is not about how much farther onto shore the water comes as a simple matter. It's about the volume of water. Storm surge is about, let's say it's 10 feet more off the surface of the water and up. So an entire area can be inundated because of storm surge, and that's the concern in a place like Naples. So the city is a mandatory evacuation zone. The mayor told our Ed Lavandera he is optimistic about what happened with evacuations, that people here actually were ahead of the curve. Even before the path shifted to the west, which is where Naples is along the western coast of Florida, people got out. Of the 19,000 people in the city proper, they believe several thousand are left. That's better than in most areas in terms of the percentage of evacuees. So this place has that going for it. It is very low in most spots and spongy. We've been watching how in these bands of rain, which have been significant, but nothing like hurricane force, the water pools up very quickly. The streets flood very quickly, which means it just doesn't have the tolerance for rain over time, which is exactly what the hurricane will bring. So if you are here, you need to get out if you can. And if you cannot get out, you need to seek shelter, okay? So, simple message. Other high points from the governor. 25 inches of rain expected in the Keys. 10 to 15, maybe closer to 20, many different areas of Florida. The whole state, head to toe, he expects serious impact. Power loss, as many as 1 million customers they're anticipating. Right now, you have over 35,000 without power in the Miami-Dade area. We haven't even had the hurricane hit here in earnest yet. And it could be, according to the governor, not for hours, for days or longer without power. That's why you heard from Senator Rubio and others, you must have a plan. You must be able to hold yourself self-sustained for 72 hours. That's a long time. And even though they have great first responders here, that's how long it may be before someone can get to you. So these are the types of things that the governor was trying to give attention to and make sure people hear and respect. Another big point of it was that the track is still what they expected it to be earlier this morning, which is that trending towards the west, making the West Coast more vulnerable here, from here all the way up to Tampa Bay. Tornado watches are in effect. If you go to any of the sites that are giving information about the weather, you'll see all the different delineations of risk, from the cells of rain, heavy rain, tornadoes. There are certain cells like that in this area moving this way now. Directly across the state from where we are in Fort Lauderdale, they have tornado warnings right now. In Miami, they have tornado warnings. We have a lot of lightning that has been coming in the area. So all of these account for risk. Now, let's get the perspective of another leader right now who knows what it's like to be through a storm in this state, Congressman Charlie Crist, of course, the former governor of Florida as well. Congressman, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Chris. I hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, well, no, thank you. Thank you for the time and your perspective on this. Irma is getting a lot of attention. I think that's an unqualified positive. This is one of those situations where all of us are really hoping to be wrong about the path, the impact, the duration, the severity. However, in what you're seeing in these storm tracks and your experience in this state, where are you in terms of your level of urgency?
Well, it's pretty urgent. I mean, it's hard to overstate the potential impact this storm is going to have on the Sunshine State, Chris. And, you know, I'm up in St. Petersburg. You're down on the West Coast, too. And obviously, you know, the shift in the tracking that we've been witnessing over the last 24 hours or so, moving it toward the west and therefore the West Coast, is a serious concern to those of us on this side of the state. But the magnitude of this storm, the fact that it's as big as it is, it's covering the entire state. It's just where it's going to have more severe impact based upon the actual tracking that we see over the next 24, 36 hours.
You know, what is there's one reality that I think deserves a little bit of attention, just to manage expectations after the storm comes and hopefully goes in short order. no matter how much preparation there is, and there does seem to be unusually excellent coordination to this point with the federal, to the state, to the local, you're going to be behind the ball with the need. If any of the expectations are even close to manifesting themselves in reality as this storm comes through, people have to be ready for that, don't they, Congressman?
Well, I think so. I think you make a very good point. But the point you made at the outset of your question about how the coordination is working between federal, state, and local levels of government, it's been pretty extraordinary, I got to say. And, you know, I was very proud of the fact that Congress stepped up the funding for not only Harvey, but then more than doubled it to about $15 billion to help out with Irma as well, in a very bipartisan fashion. You know, not often we see that over the last several years, but we're seeing it now in a time of need when it's most important, obviously. And so I think that, you know, the federal, state, and local officials are doing a great job. They've managed the evacuations very well. I think they have just the right tone when it comes to communicating with people, not being overexcited, delivering a message in a calm, common sense fashion. That's all very important so that, you know, people treat it seriously, but they also maintain a good level of thoughtfulness about what we're doing here.
There's something else that the governor spoke to that I've heard you speak about in the past and other heads of states when they're dealing with catastrophe. And I know it can sound to the audience, it won't sound this way to you, Congressman, and certainly as a former governor, but people will say, oh, that's just sweet talk and it's just faux optimism. What we've seen with cooperation and collaboration among the citizens, among regular people, this is over and above what we've seen with the government. We've seen here people going and helping one another, combining in homes. When someone has a safer home, they're going to it. It speaks to what we saw and are seeing after Harvey of people getting out there in boats and saving one another. That interconnectedness, it's not just a beautiful statement of humanity along with a very ugly statement of Mother Nature, but it's a necessary component of recovery. In your experience as a governor, the willingness of volunteers, of ordinary citizens to help their own, whether they know them or not, how important is that to recovering from something like what we're about to endure?
It's extremely important. I don't think you can overstate that. And you're absolutely right. You know, I've seen it up here in Pinellas County, you know, from St. Petersburg to Clearwater to the VA that I toured today. You know, people that are volunteering. I've met with volunteer nurses at a special needs center yesterday in Pinellas County here on the West Coast. I mean, it's heartwarming to see humankind be so kind. And that's exactly what we need and what we're seeing and what makes our country so great. We are here for each other. We're in this together. We need that kind of unity and that kind of strength. And situations like these bring that to the fore. And we're seeing it yet again here in Florida in our time of need.
Congressman, I'll make sure that the producers give you our contact information so you can tell us what you're hearing up there for the duration and let us know when information needs to get out. Thank you so much for lending your perspective to this. Congressman Charlie Crist, former governor of Florida, he knows what it takes to make it through a storm and recover. Thank you, sir. Be safe. It's not just nice that people are willing to help now and hopefully will be there after. It's necessary. It's fundamental to what will go into getting better quickly after what happens here. And Hurricane Irma, no matter where it is, no matter how bad it is, it's going to be significant. You're going to feel it. It's going to last for some time after. Every model suggests it. Every expert predicts it. So you have to prepare for it, and it seems as though those in power are doing exactly that. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, there's no question that we may see the worst of Mother Nature. Hopefully, we will see the best of human nature. We're going to show you how people are getting ready for this storm and helping one another when we come back. Please be safe and stay with CNN.
I got a condo in Manhattan. Baby girl, what's happening? You and your ass invited, so gonna get to clapping. Go pop it for me, play, pop it for me. Turn around and drop it for I'll rent a beach house in Miami. Wake up with no jammies. Lobster tail for dinner. Julio served that scampi. You got it if you want it. Got it if you want it. Said you got it if you want it. Take my wallet if you want it now. Jump in a Cadillac. Girl, let's put some miles on it. Anything you want, just to put a smile on it. You deserve it, baby. You deserve it all. And I'm gonna give it to you. Gold jewelry shining so bright. Strawberry champagne on ice. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Sex by the fire at night. Silk sheets and diamonds, all white. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. I'm talking trips to Puerto Rico. Say the word and we go. You can be my frica. Girl, I'll be a frico, mamacita. I would never make a promise that I can't keep. I promise that your smile ain't gonna never leave. Show me in a Cadillac. Girl, let's put some miles on it. Anything you want, just to put a smile on it. You deserve it, baby. You deserve it all. And I'm gonna give it to you. Gold jewelry shining so bright. Strawberry champagne on ice. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Sex by the fire at night. Silk sheets and diamonds, all white. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like. Lucky for you, that's what I like. That's what I like.
I'm sorry if I seem uninterested or I'm not listening or I'm indifferent. Truly, I ain't got no business here, but since my friends are here, I just came to kick it. But really, I would rather be at home all by myself, not in this room with people who don't even care about my well-being. I don't dance, don't ask, I don't need a boyfriend, so you can't go back. Please enjoy your party, I'll be here. Somewhere in the corner under clouds of marijuana with this boy who's hollering I can hardly hear. Oh, with this music I don't listen to and I don't want to get with you. So tell my friends that I'll be over here.
We were drenched with some of the strongest rains we'd felt yet. Now the wind is blowing as hard as we have seen yet. One of the biggest concerns, though, here in Miami and all the way out to the West Coast will be the storm surge. I want to go to Ben McMillan, a storm chaser we've been talking to, who's in Punta Gorda, Florida, right on the water there, Ben. And Ben, it really is starting to kick up where you are.
Yeah, John, this is not even the ocean behind me. This is the Peace River. We are several miles inland, and you can see how violent this area of water has already become. And we're more than 12 hours away from when the worst, or the eye of Hurricane Irma, is supposed to impact this area. So conditions are going to continue to deteriorate. Winds, we've seen wind gusts around 55 miles an hour, so we haven't seen the worst of those yet. But as you can see, several things are going downhill here in terms of the weather.
So Ben, give our audience some kind of perspective here from where the water is now, where they can see it behind you, excuse me, the wind's blowing here, to how much more it will rise where you are.
Well, there's only about 3 feet here, John, of protection from the river up here into the city of Punta Gorda, a city of around 20,000. we're expecting surge of about 10 to 15 feet. So that will rapidly overcome these barriers, and the water will potentially go into the city if that hurricane stays on track.
And Ben, again, you've watched a lot of storms in your career. What is unique about Irma?
The biggest thing is just how long it's going to stay paralleling the coast over water. Water is what these hurricanes thrive on, what gives them their energy. And with that track, keeping it just off the Florida coast from Naples to Fort Myers and up towards Tampa, they could all be experiencing potentially very violent conditions come daytime tomorrow.
All right, Ben McMillan for us in Punta Gorda. Again, the storm surge there could be 10 to 15 feet, not just on the coast, but also the rivers and bays. Ben McMillan, thank you so much. CNN's special live coverage continues right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Where I'm going first.
For coming into CNN's continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. You see John Berman in Miami. We are now in Naples, Florida, along the western coast. This path has shifted with the hurricane. We heard about it early this morning. The change has stayed in terms of what the expectation is, that the central to west coast of Florida is now expected to see the worst of Hurricane Irma, from here all the way up to Tampa Bay. Right now, I'm going to give it to John Berman, who is in Miami. I'm going to try to get my communications back. John, I can't hear you, but you can hear me. So tell people the situation down there, and let me try to get reconnected.
All right, Chris, take care of business over there. We're sort of the appetizer for what Chris is going to get over on the west coast of Florida. What he gets on the west, we get here first in Miami. We just got drenched about 20 minutes ago with the strongest rain bands we have felt yet, and now the wind is really blowing stronger than we have seen up until now. Hurricane Irma, a Category 3 storm, but it will get stronger, and it has started to make that northward turn. It passed Cuba. It pounded the north coast of Cuba. Now headed north, the Florida Keys, the next target before turning over the Florida Peninsula and potentially bringing devastating storm surge to some parts of the west coast of Florida.